The 1st of September, 1939. After a false accusation that the Poles attacked a German radio station, Nazi Germany launches a retaliatory campaign against Poland, triggering World War II. Poland finds itself fighting a two-front war when it's invaded by the Soviet Union from the east on the 17th of September. Warsaw officially surrenders to the Germans on the 28th of September, and one day later, in accordance with a secret protocol to their non-aggression pact, Germany and the Soviet Union partition Poland. After defeating the Polish army, the Germans ruthlessly suppress the Poles, whom they consider to be racially inferior, and in the weeks following the German attack on Poland, German SS, police, and military units shoot thousands of Polish civilians, including many members of the Polish nobility, clergy, and intelligentsia. Approximately 1.8 million Jews remaining within the area occupied by Germany are imprisoned in ghettos, and after the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, over 3 million Polish Jews are deported to Nazi concentration camps. One such camp is Stutthof, and one of its most infamous guards becomes Gerda Steinhoff. Gerda Steinhoff was born on the 29th of January 1922 in Danzig, today's Gdansk, which then belonged to the city-state named the Free City of Danzig. As a teenager, Gerda, a daughter of evangelical parents, worked as a housemaid on a farm at Dingenhagen near Danzig. The Free City of Danzig was created following World War I. In the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, the victorious powers, the United States, Great Britain, France and other allied states, imposed punitive territorial, military, and economic treaty terms on the defeated Germany. One provision required Germany to cede West Prussia, including Danzig, to the newly reconstructed state of Poland, which was given certain rights pertaining to the port facilities of the city. Danzig, largely an ethnically German city, became a free city under the protection of the League of Nations, but with special administrative ties to Poland. The League of Nations was the first worldwide intergovernmental organization whose principal mission was to maintain world peace. However, Germany resented the loss of this largely German city, and after Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party came into power in January 1933, he was determined to overturn the military and territorial provisions of the Versailles Treaty. After, in May 1933, the Nazi Party became the leading power in Danzig, anti-Polish sentiment increased and both Germanization and segregation policies intensified. In 1935, the Jewish community of Danzig turned to the League of Nations for help, but by that time the organization was too weak to have enough influence. From 1937, the employment of Poles by German companies was prohibited, and already employed Poles were fired. The use of Polish in public places was banned, and the Poles were not allowed to enter several restaurants, in particular those owned by Germans. After the Kristallnacht pogrom of November 1938, which was a series of coordinated violent riots against the Jews throughout Nazi Germany and recently incorporated territories, the Nuremberg race laws were put into effect, with just a few changes. As the anti-Jewish legislation became more severe, most of the Jews of Danzig emigrated, leaving only 4,000. The Jewish community and government decided to cooperate with regard to Jewish immigration, and on the 17th of December 1938, the Jews announced publicly that they were willing to leave. From 1939, Gerda Steinhoff worked in a bakery in Danzig and later became a tramway conductor. When the war broke out on the 1st of September 1939, the Polish military forces in the city held out until the 7th of September. Up to 4,500 members of the Polish minority were arrested, with many of them executed. In the city itself, hundreds of Polish prisoners were subjected to cruel executions and experiments, which included castration of men and sterilization of women considered to be dangerous to the purity of the Nordic race, and beheading by guillotine. The judicial system was one of the main tools of extermination policy towards Poles, led by Nazi Germany in the city, and verdicts were motivated by statements that Poles were subhuman. When Danzig united with Germany in September 1939, only 1,600 Jews were left in the city. Emigration continued until the fall of 1940, and at the end of February 1941, the city's remaining 600 Jews were deported to their deaths in Poland. In September 1939, the Germans established the Stutthof camp in a wooded area west of Stutthof, a town about 22 miles east of Danzig. The original camp, known as the Old Camp, was surrounded by barbed wire fences at 8 barracks for the inmates built by prisoners in 1940. The camp was established in connection with the ethnic cleansing project that included the liquidation of Polish elites, such as members of the intelligentsia, as well as religious and political leaders. Even before the war, the Germans had created lists of people to be arrested, and the Nazi authorities were secretly reviewing suitable places to set up concentration camps in their area. Originally, Stutthof was a civilian internment camp under the Danzig police chief, before its subsequent massive expansion. In November 1941, it became a labor education camp for political prisoners and persons accused of violating labor discipline, administered by the SD, German security police. Finally, in January 1942, Stutthof became a regular concentration camp under the jurisdiction of the SS. In 1943, the camp was enlarged, and a new camp was constructed alongside the earlier one. It contained 30 new barracks and was surrounded by electrified barbed wire fences. A crematorium and gas chamber were added in 1943, just in time to start mass executions, when Stutthof was included in the final solution in June 1944. The maximum capacity of the gas chamber was 150 people per execution. Eventually, the Stutthof camp system became a vast network of forced labor camps. 105 Stutthof subcamps were established throughout northern and central German-occupied Poland. Tens of thousands of people, perhaps as many as 100,000, were deported to the Stutthof camp. The prisoners were mainly non-Jewish Poles. Conditions in the camp were brutal. Many prisoners died in typhus epidemics that swept the camp in the winter of 1942 and again in 1944. Those whom the SS guards judged too weak or sick to work were gassed in a gas chamber. Gassing with Zyklon B gas began in June 1944. 4,000 prisoners, including Jewish women and children, were killed in the gas chamber before the evacuation of the camp. Camp doctors also killed sick or injured prisoners in the infirmary with lethal injections of phenol. More than 60,000 people died in Stutthof concentration camp and its subcamps. Until 1942, nearly all the prisoners were Polish. The number of inmates increased considerably in 1944, with Jews forming a significant proportion of the newcomers. The first contingent of 2,500 Jewish prisoners arrived from Auschwitz in July 1944. In total, 23,566 Jews, including 21,817 women, were transferred to Stutthof from Auschwitz. The camp staff consisted of SS guards and, after 1943, Ukrainian auxiliaries. On the 25th of January, 1944, Gerda Steinhoff got married and soon gave birth to a child. The same year in June, the SS in Stutthof began conscripting women from Danzig and the surrounding cities to train as camp guards because of their severe shortage after the women's subcamp of Stutthof called Barbed was set up in the city of Bydgoszcz. One such woman became Gerda Steinhoff, who at that time worked as a tram conductor. Until the 31st of October, 1944, she belonged to the SS guards in one of the Stutthof's 40 subcamps, the Stutthof SK3, and had 400 women and children in her jurisdiction, all at her mercy. From the 31st of October to the 1st of December, 1944, she was an SS Oberaufseherin in Danzig home, which was another of Stutthof's subcamps. She held the same position in Bydgoszcz, the previously mentioned women's subcamp of Stutthof, from the 1st of December 1944 to the 18th of January 1945. In all the camps, Steinhoff was devoted to her job and became known as a ruthless overseer. She was known for beating some female inmates, including children, to death, either with her bare hands or with her whip. In addition, she took part in selections of prisoners to be sent to the gas chambers. On the 25th of January 1945, for her services as overseer, she was awarded the Iron Cross. The evacuation of prisoners from the Stutthof camp system in northern Poland began in January 1945. When the final evacuation began, there were nearly 50,000 prisoners in the Stutthof camp system, the overwhelming majority of them Jews. About 5,000 prisoners from the Stutthof subcamps were marched to the Baltic Sea coast, forced into the water, and machine-gunned. The rest of the prisoners were marched in the direction of Lauenburg in East Germany, but after they were cut off by advancing Soviet forces, the Germans forced the surviving prisoners back to Stutthof. Marching in severe winter conditions and treated brutally by the SS guards, thousands died during the march. In late April 1945, the remaining prisoners were removed from Stutthof by sea, since Stutthof was completely encircled by Soviet forces. Again, hundreds of prisoners were forced into the sea and shot. It has been estimated that over 25,000 prisoners, 1 in 2, died during the evacuation from Stutthof and its subcamps. When the Soviet forces liberated Stutthof on the 9th of May, 1945, they found only about 100 prisoners who had managed to hide during the final evacuation of the camp. Altogether, some 100,000 prisoners passed through Stutthof. 60,000 of them perished, while another 22,000 were transferred to other concentration camps. Shortly before the end of the war, Steinhoff escaped from the camp and returned home. Her arrest took place on the 25th of May, 1945. Steinhoff was then trialed at the first Stutthof trial, which began on the 25th of April, 1946. She and her female Nazi comrades from Stutthof all pleaded not guilty to the general charge of war crimes, and the women did not seem to take the trial seriously. They were said to have behaved insolently, giggling and joking during the proceedings. The trial ended on the 31st of May. Gerda Steinhoff, for her involvement in the selections and her sadistic abuse of the prisoners, was sentenced to death by hanging. She cried as the verdict was announced. Her execution was held publicly and became a theater of horror, which was recorded by official press photographers. After World War II, only 3 public executions of war criminals were carried out in Poland. One of them took place at Biskupia Górka Hill near Gdansk, former Danzig. When on the 4th of July, 1946, 11 Nazi criminals from the Stutthof concentration camp, including 24-year-old Gerda Steinhoff, were hanged from the gallows, 200,000 people were watching. On that day, Biskupia Górka Hill experienced a real siege. 3 days earlier, the newspapers had reported the date of the execution. Workplaces announced a day off and provided employees with transport to the event. Everyone could come to witness the execution. The security forces feared that a lynching might occur at any moment, and the militia and army had difficulty controlling the huge crowd. The 4th of July was very warm. The sun was shining. Punctually at 5 p.m., 11 open trucks brought the prisoners to the execution ground, their hands and legs tied with cords. On the platform of each of the 11 trucks stood a convict, 6 men and 5 women in total. The trucks were backed under the gallows, and the condemned made to stand on the tailboards or on the chairs on which they had been sitting. Former Stutthof prisoners, dressed in striped uniforms, volunteered to serve as executioners and put a simple cord noose around the convicts' necks. The execution was planned in such a way that after each truck would be driven forward, the 11 convicts would be left suspended, and their bodies would not fall from too great a height. As a result, the nooses did not break their necks and did not cause an instant death. This short drop method of hanging resulted in a torturous death by strangulation of each of the criminals, lasting anywhere from 10 to 20 long minutes. When the driver of the first truck, carrying Johann Pauls, former commandant of the guards in Stutthof, started the engine and moved slowly forward, Pauls, before sliding off the platform and hanging from the rope, managed to shout, "Heil Hitler!" He was answered by the insults of the crowd. As Pauls' body went still, another truck started moving, and another criminal began what those present at the execution described as a rope dance. As each truck moved forward, the other convicts had the opportunity to take a good look at what awaited them in the next few moments. When one truck driver failed to start the engine several times, the former Stutthof prisoner pushed the convict off the platform. The crowd waved, and the people shouted, "For our husbands, for our children." When the last convict died, the security forces allowed the crowd to the gallows. People ripped off buttons, cut off pieces of fabric, and kicked and smashed the corpses. The gathered people were then chased away, and the bodies were removed from the gallows. They were then taken to the Medical University of Gdansk to be used as a teaching aid in anatomy classes. There were no tears shed for Gerda Steinhoff. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.